he was in Arizona Territory, 1847, when he witnessed something that would among the dusty streets of Tombstone for generations to come. The auction block stood like a monument to human cruelty in the center of town, where desperate souls were sold like cattle under the scorching desert sun. But on this particular day, something extraordinary was about to unfold that would challenge everything the top people believed about justice redemption, and the true nature of the human heart. The woman they dragged to that voting platform was the destiny captive. Her name was Ayanna, which meant eternal blossom in her native tongue, and she carried secrets that could destroy the most powerful men in the territory. Her tears weren't just for the family she had been torn from, but for the terrible truth she knew about the massacre at Copper Canyon. A truth that certain people would kill to keep buried. As the auctioneer's voice boomed across the crowd, announcing the bidding for this Apache woman, nobody could have predicted that the mysterious rancher stepping forward with his silver coins would set in motion a chain of events that would expose a conspiracy, reaching all the way to the territorial governor's mansion. The morning sun cast long shadows across the red dirt of Prescott as the crowd gathered for what they called a Salvation auction. These weren't ordinary slave auctions, the top people told themselves. These were opportunities to rescue Indian captives from a life of savagery, to bring them into civilized society as servants and lurkers. The hypocrites burned like acid in the desert air, but nobody spoke against it, nobody except the tall stranger in the black hat who had hidden into town 3 days earlier, asking questions that made the sheriff nervous and the mayor sweat through his Sunday suit. Ayanna stood on that platform with her hands bound behind her back, her traditional dress torn and stained with dash and tears. She was barely 20 years old, with eyes that held the wisdom of someone who had seen too much death and betrayal. The scars on her wrist told a story of recent captivity, but the determined set of her jaw suggested this woman was far from broken. She scanned the crowd desperately, looking for any sign of mercy, any face that might offer hope in this sea of greed and indifference. The auctioneer, a fat man named Jameson who had grown rich of human misery, wiped the sweat from his brow as he began his practiced speech. He spoke of Ayanna as if she were livestock, describing her appearing health, her ability to work, her potential for bearing children who could be raised as proper Christians. Each word was a knife twist in the young woman's heart, but she remained silent, knowing that any show of defiance would only make her situation worse. What the crowd didn't know was that Ayanna understood every word they spoke, having learned English from a missionary who had visited her village before the soldiers came. The bidding started slowly, with local ranchers and business owners calling out amounts like they were haggling over horses. $50, 75, 100. Each bid felt like a nail in Ayanna's coffin, sealing her fate as property rather than a human being. She closed her eyes and tried to remember her grandmother's stories about the spirit world, wondering if her ancestors were watching this degradation with shame or sorrow. Then she heard a voice cut through the crowd like a blade through silk, clear and commanding and somehow different from all the others. $500, the mysterious rancher called out, causing a ripple of shock to run through the assembled crowd. This was just an unusual bid. It was an astronomical amount that nobody could compete with. The man stepped forward into the morning light, revealing a face that was veteran but kind, with steel grey eyes that seemed to see straight through to a person's soul. His name was Jacob M. Sekena, and he carried himself with the key confidence of someone who had faced down death more times than required to count. The crowd fell silent as Jameson struggled to process this unexpected development. $500 was more money than most of these people saw in 2 years. And it raised uncomfortable questions about why anyone would pay such a premium for an Indian captive. The sheriff, a corrupt man named Wade who took bribes from cattle rustlers and clan jumpers, pushed through the crowd with his hand resting on his gun, clearly suspicious of this sudden turn of events. He had been hoping to buy Ayanna himself for a much lower price. Having his own dark plans for what to do with her but Jacob McKenna was intimidated by lawmen or crowds or the weight of suspicious stars. He stepped up to the platform and counted out the money in silver coins, each one hinging against the wooden boards like a bell tolling for the old ways. As he handed over the payment, he looked directly into Ayanna's eyes and spoke words in her own language, words that made her gaze in recognition and hope. Here to take you home, he said in perfect Apache, his voice carrying the promise of freedom rather than another form of bondage. What nobody in that crowd knew was that Jacob McKenna had his own reasons for being impressed. Reasons that had nothing to do with acquiring servants or satisfying base desires. 3 months earlier, his own daughter had been taken by a rogue cavalry unit that was operating outside the law, selling captives to the highest bidders while claiming they were conducting legitimate military operations. The trail had led him here, to this dusty town where human beings were bought and sold like commodities, and where the truth about what happened to missing people was buried deep the graves in Boot Hill. As Ayanna was released from her bonds and handed over to her new owner, she could not help but notice the way Jacob's hand shoes legal as helped her down from the platform. This was the behavior of a man who did just acquired property, but rather someone who was genuinely moved by what he had witnessed. He wrapped his own coat around her shoulders, protecting her modesty from the leering eyes of the crowd, and whispered instructions about staying close to him until they could get somewhere safe to talk. The walk to Jacob's horse felt like the longest journey of Ayanna's life, with every step taking her further from the known horror of the auction block and closer to uncertain future with this mysterious stranger. She could feel the eyes of the crowd following them, could hear the whispered speculations about what McKenna planned to do with his expensive purchase. Some suggested he was just another rich man with unseemly appetites, while others wondered if he might be some kind of government agent investigating the territorial administration's involvement in the Indian trade. Jacob's horse was a magnificent black stallion named Thunder, chosen not for its beauty but for its speed and endurance. As he helped Ayanna mount behind him, he spoke quietly in her language, explaining that they were going to ride to his ranch where she would be safe and free to make her own choices about the future. But first, he needed to know what she had endured in her captivity, because he suspected her experiences might be connected to his search for his missing daughter Sarah. The ride out of Prescott felt like escaping from hell itself, with the red rocks and desert landscape opening up before them like a promise of redemption. But as they put distance between themselves and the town, Ayanna began to realize that her rescue might be more complicated than she initially hoped. Jacob was the dash good Samaritan who the impulsively decided to save a stranger from slavery. He was a man on a mission, and that mission might require her help in ways that could put them both in mortal danger. As they rode, Ayanna told Jacob about the night her village was attacked, not by hostile tribes or wild animals, but by soldiers wearing the uniform of the United States Cavalry. But these weren't ordinary soldiers following orders from their superiors. They were rogue operators led by a man named Colonel Harrison Blackwood, who had discovered that selling Indian captives was more profitable than fighting them according to military regulations. The attack on her village had been carefully planned to look like the result of tribal warfare, but Ayanna had seen the truth with her own eyes. Jacob listened to her story with growing anger and recognition, because the description she gave of Colonel Blackwood matched perfectly with reports he had gathered about the man who had taken his daughter Sarah from their ranch in Colorado territory. This was a coincidence he realized, but part of a larger pattern of corruption that reached from individual military units all the way up to the territorial government itself. Governor Mitchell had been turning a blind eye to these operations in exchange for a percentage of the profits, while Sheriff Wade and other local officials provided protection and logistics for the human trafficking network. But Ayanna's story took an even darker turn as she revealed what she had overheard while being held in the military stockade outside Phoenix. Colonel Blackwood was the dash selling captives to individual buyers at local auctions. He was running a much larger operation that shipped people to mining camps in Nevada and California, where they disappeared forever into dangerous underground tunnels and back-breaking labor that killed most workers within months. The auction in Prescott was just the visible tip of an iceberg that included kidnapping, murder, and conspiracy at the highest levels of government. The revelation hit Jacob like a physical blow, because it meant that Sarah might not even be in the territory anymore. She could have been shipped hundreds of miles away to a mining operation where finding her would be nearly impossible. But it also meant that Ayanna was in tremendous danger, because she was the only witness who could tie Colonel Blackwood to specific crimes that could bring down the entire network. The moment word got back to the military that she'd be freed and was talking, every gunman and red killer in the Southwest would be hunting them. As the sun reached its peak in the cloudless Arizona sky, Jacob made a decision that would change both their lives forever. Instead of continuing to his ranch where they would be sitting ducks for Blackwood's men, they were going to disappear into the Badlands and begin a guerrilla campaign to expose the truth and rescue other victims of the trafficking network. It was dangerous beyond measure, but it was also the only way to ensure that Ayanna remained free and that Sarah might someday come home. Their first stop was an abandoned mining claim in the Dragon Mountains, where Jacob had cached supplies and weapons for exactly this kind of emergency. As they made camp in a hidden canyon that could only be reached by following a treacherous path through towering rock formations, Ayanna began to understand that her rescuer was far more than just a concerned father searching for his daughter. Jacob McKenna was a former Cavalry Scout who served with distinction in the Mexican War, and repossessed skills in trekking, survival, and warfare that made him one of the most dangerous men in the territory when he chose to be. But even Jacob's impressive abilities might not be enough to save them from what was coming. As night fell over their hidden camp, they could see signal fires being lit on distant peaks, a sign that Blackwood's men were already mobilizing to hunt them down. The colonel had contacts throughout the territory, from crook alarming to Indian soldiers who had been forced to work for the military, and he could call upon resources that made him nearly as powerful as the territorial government itself. Ayanna sat by their small, carefully concealed fire and told Jacob about the other women and children she'd seen during her captivity, people whose families had probably given them up for dead but who might still be saved if they could locate the main holding facility before the next shipment headed west. Among them was a young Mexican woman named Isabella whose father was a wealthy rancher near Tucson, and a teenage Apache girl called Morning Star whose brother had been searching for her for months without success. The more Jacob learned about the scope of Blackwood's operation, the more he realized that this was just a criminal enterprise but an act of war against the indigenous peoples of the Southwest. The colonel was deliberately targeting specific communities and families, break up tribal structures and traditional ways of life while profiting from the misery recreated. It was genocide disguised as commerce, and it required a response that went beyond simple rescue missions or legal proceedings that could be corrupted by dirt officials. As they planned their next moves in the flickering firelight, Ayanna revealed the most shocking part of her story. During her time in captivity, she overheard conversations between Colonel Blackwood and his civilian partners that revealed the true scope of their ambitions. They weren't content to simply sell individual captives to local buyers. They were working to establish a permanent network of labor camps throughout the western territories. Places where kidnapped people could be worked to death in mines and mills while generating enormous profits for their captors. The plan was breathtaking in its cruelty and scope, involving coordination between corrupt military officers, territorial politicians, and wealthy businessmen who saw human trafficking as just another form of commerce. They identified specific communities to target, developed routes for transporting victims without detection, and established relationships with mine owners and factory operators who would pay premium prices for workers who could ignore the complaint to authorities or demand fair wages. Jacob felt his blind turn to ice as he realized that Sarah's disappearance was the isolated tragedy but part of a systematic campaign that had probably claimed hundreds of victims already. The ranchers and top people who participated in the auction earlier that they weren't just buying individual servants. They were supporting a network that was destroying entire communities and ways of life across the American Southwest. But Ayanna's revelations also provided hope, because she learned the location of the main staging area where victims were held before being shipped to their final destinations. It was a fortified ranch in the mountains near Globe, operated by a man named that Hanson who became from the army for cruelty to prisoners but had found new employment with Blackwood's organization. If they could reach that location and gather evidence of what was happening there, they might be able to expose the entire network to authorities who weren't already corrupted by bribes and threats. The journey to Anson's Ranch would take them through some of the most dangerous terrain in the territory. Apache strongholds where Geronimo's warriors were still fighting a desperate campaign against American expansion. But it would also take them through territory controlled by Blackwood's men, who would be watching every trail and water hole for signs of their passage. One mistake, one moment of carelessness, and they would both end up as captives in the very system they were trying to destroy. As dawn broke over the Dragon Mountains, Jacob and Ayanna began their most perilous journey yet. Knowing that the lives of dozens of innocent people depended on their success. Behind them lay the comfortable certainties of civilization, where people like Sheriff Wade and Governor Mitchell could hide their crimes behind badges and legal documents. Ahead lay the harsh truth of the wilderness, where survival depended on courage, skill, and the willingness to fight for justice even when the odds seemed impossible. The trail to Globe wound through lanka papes that seemed carved from the bones of ancient gods. With towering mesas and deep canyons that could hide armies or conceal the evidence of terrible crimes. As they rode, Ayanna tagged Jacob words in her language that he might need if they encountered Apache warriors, while he showed her how to handle the Winchester rifle that might mean the difference between life and death in the battles to come. Their first encounter with Blackwood's became sooner than expected, at a water hole called Seleton Springs where a three-man patrol was waiting in ambush. But Jacob's military experience and Ayanna's intimate knowledge of the terrain allowed them to turn the tables on their hunters, capturing two of the men alive and learning valuable intelligence about the colonel's deployment patterns and communication methods. The interrogation revealed that bounties had been placed on both their heads, with rewards large enough to attract every bounty hunter and desperado in the territory. As they continued toward their destination, the landscape around them seemed to grow more hostile and forbidding. As if the very rocks and trees knew about the evil being perpetrated in these remote places. They passed abandoned domesticates where entire families had simply vanished, leaving behind only scattered belongings and questions that would never be answered. Each empty cabin and burnout barn was a testament to the hit of Blackwood's organization and the vulnerability of anyone who sought in their way. The closer they got to Anson's Ranch, the more signs they saw of increased military activity in the area. Smoke from distant signal fires, the tracks of large groups of riders, and the remains of camps that had been still abandoned all pointed to a major operation in progress. Jacob began to suspect that they were walking into a trap. But Ayanna insisted that they had to continue because she recognized some of the personal belongings at the abandoned domesticates as belonging to women from her village, who had been taken on the same night she was captured. Their arrival at the ridge overlooking Anson's Ranch came just as the sun was setting behind the western mountains, painting the sky the color of blood and casting long shadows across the valley below. What they saw through Jacob's field glasses was worse than either of them had imagined. The ranch was just a holding facility for human cargo, but a full-scale military installation with guard towers, barbed wire fences, and barracks that could house hundreds of soldiers. This was the work of a rogue colonel acting independently, but evidence of official support for the trafficking operation at the highest levels of government. But the most shocking sight was the railroad spur that had been built to connect the rent with the main Southern Pacific Line, providing a direct route for shipping human cargo to destinations throughout the West without any oversight or inspection. The scope of the operation was staggering, involving construction costs that could only have been financed by people with access to federal funds and the political influence to avoid hard questions about budget, allocations and engineering projects in remote locations. As they vanished from their hidden position, Jacob and Ayanna saw evidence of the daily routine that kept the trafficking network operating smoothly. Guards patrolled the perimeter while work details of captives labored to expand the facilities under the supervision of armed overseers. Women and children were separated into different compounds, with they all just being held in a special section that suggested they were being prepared for particular types of boys who preferred victims too young to effectively resist or report their captors to authorities. The sight of children being processed like livestock was more than Jacob or Ayanna could bear, and they began planning immediate rescue attempts despite the overwhelming odds against success. But as they studied the layout of the facility and the deployment of guards, they realized that a frontal assault would be suicide and would likely result in the execution of all the captives they were trying to save. They needed a different approach, one that would allow them to gather evidence while creating enough confusion to facilitate escapes. Their opportunity came when they observed a supply train arriving from the direction of Phoenix, loaded with provisions and escorted by a detail of cavalry soldiers who were clearly part of Blackwood's organization rather than legitimate military personnel. The train would remain overnight before continuing to mining camps in Nevada, providing a window of time when security might be relaxed and additional confusion could be created by sabotaging the railroad equipment. As midnight approached, Jacob and Ayanna made their way down into the valley using a route that took them through an arroyo system that provided cover from the guard towers. Their first objective was the communications hardware. Telegraph messages were received and transmitted, because destroying it would prevent ransom from calling for reinforcements when their rescue attempt began. Their second target was the armory, where disabling the weapons would give the captives a better chance of escaping during the chaos that was about to ensue. The infiltration went smoothly until they reached the compound where the women and children were held, and Ayanna saw faces she recognized from her own village and others that had been destroyed by Blackwood's raiders. The emotional impact of seeing friends and relatives who had been giving up, for dead nearly overwhelmed her, but Jacob's steady presence and whispered reminders about the need for stealth kept her focused on the mission. They had one chance to save these people, and failure would mean death or worse for everyone involved. But as they worked to free the captives and prepare them for escape, they discovered that their infiltration had been detected by sentries who had been watching for exactly this kind of rescue attempt. Colonel Blackwood himself had arrived at the ranch earlier that evening, having anticipated that Jacob would eventually track the operation to its source. The man who stepped out of the shadows with a revolver in his hand was a corrupt military officer, but a cold-blooded killer who would be eliminating witnesses and potential threats for years. The confrontation that followed would determine not only the fate of Jacob and Ayanna, but the future of the entire trafficking network that had been terrorizing the Southwest for months. As the first shots rang out across the desert night, signals fires blazed to life on surrounding peaks, calling together forces that would converge on this remote valley to settle accounts that had been built since the first innocent person was sold into slavery at a frontier auction. The battle for justice was about to begin, and its outcome would echo through the territory for generations to come. The gunfight that erupted in ancient rent compound shattered the desert silence like thunder breaking over the mountains. Jacob's military training served him well as he dove for cover behind a water trough, pulling Ayanna with him while bullets whined overhead like angry hornets. Colonel Blackwood's voice cut through the chaos. Shouting orders to his me while keeping his own weapon trained on the captives they be trying to free. The message was clear, surrender or watch innocent people die for their rescue attempted. But Jacob MC cannot survived the Michigan War and countless frontier battles by giving up when the odds turned against him. As muesli flashes lit up the compo like the ad of reflex, responded something that gave him hope. The captives weren't covering in terror as Blackwood expected, but were using the confusion to break free from their restraints and seek cover. Ayanna's whispered words in Apache and Spanish were spreading through the group like wildfire, telling them that rescue had finally come and that they needed to be ready to run when the opportunity presented itself. The turning point came when that Hanson, the brutal ranch supervisor, made the mistake of underestimating his former captives. As removed to use a young Michigan girl as a human shield Morning Star, the Apache teenager Ayanna had told Jacob about, struck like a coiled rattlesnake. Her makeshift weapon, a sharpened piece of metal she'd hidden for weeks, found its mark with the added precision. Anson's scream of pain and surprise gave the other captives the signal they'd been waiting for, and suddenly the compo erupted in organized chaos as people who'd been written off as helpless victims became fighters determined to reclaim their freedom. Jacob used the distraction to advance on Colonel Blackwood's position, his Winchester rifle speaking with the deadly accuracy in the flickering light of burning buildings. The corrupt officer had built his career on victimizing people who could ignore the fight back. But now he was facing someone who understood warfare as well as he did and who had far more motivation to win this particular battle. It shot Jacob fired devastated aimed at eliminating enemy but at striking a blow for every family that had been destroyed by the trafficking network. The battle raged for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, with the Otomi engine in the balance as reinforcements arrived from both sides. Apache warriors who'd been tracking the colonel's operations appeared on the surrounding ridges. There were creation of the canyon walls as they joined the fight to liberate their stolen people. At the same time, corrupt cavalry units loyal to Blackwood converged on the ranch from multiple directions, turning the rescue attempt into a full-scale engagement that would determine the future of justice in the Arizona territory. But the most dramatic moment came when Sarah MC Kenna, Jacob's daughter who'd been missing for months, emerged from one of the barracks buildings with a group of other long-term captives who'd be held for eventual shipment to the mining camps. Her appearance on the battlefield was like a miracle to her father, but also a stark reminder of what was at stake in this confrontation. She was the same innocent girl who'd be taken from their Colorado ranch, but hardened survivor who'd endured horrors that had transformed her into someone willing to fight alongside seasoned warriors for her freedom. The reunion between father and daughter was brief but powerful, with Sarah quickly explaining that she'd be organizing the other captives for weeks, waiting for an opportunity to escape or for rescue to arrive. Her intelligence about the layout of the facility and the habits of their guards proved invaluable as Jacob and Ayanna coordinated their fighting retreat toward the canyon where their horses waited. But Sarah also broke devastating news. Colonel Blackwood had been planning to eliminate all the witnesses by burning the compo and claiming it had been destroyed in an Apache raid. As if summoned by her words, flames began to lick at the buildings around them, started by Blackwood's men who were following their commander's scorched earth orders. The fire spread quickly in the dry desert air, threatening to trap everyone in the compo and destroy all evidence of the trafficking operation. Jacob realized that they had only minutes to get everyone out before the entire valley became a death trap. But the exits were controlled by enemy forces who had no intention of letting witnesses escape alive. The solution came from an unexpected source, Isabella the wealthy Michigan rancher's daughter who Ayanna had befriended during their captivity. Revealed that she'd been secretly mapping the underground tunnels that had been dug to connect different parts of the facility. These passages, originally intended to provide secure movement for guards and valuable cargo, now offered the only escape route that didn't involve fighting through a ville defended positions. As smoke-filled there and buildings collapsed in showers of sparks. Jacob led the group of liberated captives through a maze of tunnels that seemed to lead directly into the heart of the mountain. The underground journey was a roving, with the sound of gunfire and shouting growing fainter behind them while the wall seemed to press closer with each step. Jacob's lantern cast dancing shadows that made everyone look like ghosts, while their grew thicker with each breath. But Ayanna stayed close to his side. Her presence providing strength and determination that kept him moving forward, even when the tunnel seemed to stretch endlessly into the darkness ahead. They emerged from the mountain passages nearly a mile from the burning heat, gasping in the cool night air while explosions issued from the valley behind them. Colonel Blackwood's desperate attempt to destroy all evidence was succeeding too well, consuming not only the buildings and records that could have convicted him, but also several of his own men who had been caught in the conflagration. As they watched from their vantage point on the ridge, Jacob realized that their victory had come at a terrible cost, but that justice had finally been served in the only way possible on this lawless frontier. The aftermath of the battle saw the beginning of real change in the Arizona territory. As news of the trafficking network spread throughout the region and honest officials began investigating the connections between corrupt military officers and territorial politicians. Governor Mitchell was forced to resign in disgrace when evidence surfaced linking him to Blackwood's operations, while Sheriff Wade and dozens of other local officials found themselves facing federal charges that would end their careers and send many of them to prison. But the most important outcome was the reunion of families that had been torn apart by the trafficking network, as word spread that loved ones would have been given up, for dead were alive and free. Ayanna was able to return to the remnants of her village, where she became a leader in rebuilding their traditional way of life while also serving as a bridge between Apache and American communities. Her courage during the rescue operation had earned her respect from both cultures, making her an invaluable advocate for peace and understanding in a region that had seen too much violence and hatred. Jacob and Sarai Sekena returned to Colorado territory, but their lives had been forever changed by their experiences in Arizona. Sarah's ordeal had given her a strength and perspective that made her a powerful voice for victims' rights, while Jacob used his knowledge of the trafficking network to help federal investigators track down and prosecute the remaining participants in Blackwood's organization. Their hunt became a safe haven for other survivors who needed time to heal and rebuild their lives after experiencing the worst that humanity had to offer. The story of the auction in Prescott and the battle at Ancients Hunt became a legend throughout the Southwest, a reminder that even in the darkest times, individual acts of courage and compassion could change the course of history. The mysterious rancher who paid $500 to free a vaping woman had set in motion events that exposed corruption at the highest levels of government and saved dozens of innocent lives from a fate worse than death. And Ayanna was named an eternal blossom, proved that even the most brutal attempts to destroy the human spirit could not extinguish the hope for freedom and justice that burns in every heart. Her tears on the auction block had been the beginning of her story, not the end, and her courage in the face of overwhelming odds had helped write a new chapter in the history of the American frontier. As the sun rose over the Arizona territory on the morning after the battle, it illuminated a landscape that looked the same but had been fundamentally transformed by the events of the previous night. The age of unchecked exploitation and human trafficking was ending, replaced by a new era where the law would protect all people regardless of their race or origin. It was a victory that had been purchased with blood and sacrifice, but it was also a promise that the ideals of freedom and justice would eventually triumph over greed and hatred in the American West. The auction block in Prescott was torn down by angry people who were ashamed of their participation in the trafficking network. While the courts where corrupt officials had once dispensed their twisted version of justice became a symbol of genuine law and order under new leadership. The transformation was the immediate or complete, but it was real and lasting. A testament to the power of individuals who refuse to accept injustice as inevitable. In the end, the story of Ayanna and Jacob M. Sekena became more than just a tale of rescue and revenge. It became a foundation MYTH for a new kind of American community. One where different cultures could coexist with mutual respect and where the strong protected the weak instead of exploiting them. Their victory over Colonel Blackwood's trafficking network proved that even the most entrenched systems of oppression could be defeated by people who are willing to risk everything for the cause of justice and human dignity.